First Contact Protocol Ambassador Crixiel had served the Veth Collective for over 200 cycles. She had met species that breathed methane. She had negotiated with beings made of living crystal. She had once shared a meal with a creature that existed in 4 dimensions at once. Nothing had prepared her for humans. The preliminary reports had seemed so normal. A new species discovered in a distant arm of the galaxy. Bipedal, carbon-based, average intelligence for their development stage. The scientists had marked them as a standard uplift candidate. Another young race to guide toward the stars. Then the cultural analysis arrived. Crixiel sat in her office aboard the diplomatic vessel and watched the footage for the 3rd time. On the screen, humans gathered around a table. They were eating. This should have been unremarkable. Every species ate. But these humans were consuming capsaicin. She pulled up the chemical analysis. Capsaicin was a defensive compound produced by certain plants on the human homeworld. It triggered pain receptors. It caused burning sensations, difficulty breathing, and tears. It was, by any reasonable definition, a chemical weapon. The humans on the screen were eating it on purpose. Not just eating it, competing. They had organized a contest to see who could consume the highest concentration. The winner was crying. His face had turned an alarming shade of red. He could barely breathe. And he was smiling. The crowd cheered. Crixiel paused the footage. She contacted the research team directly. "There must be an error in the data," she said. "Please run the analysis again." "We have run it 17 times, Ambassador," the lead researcher replied. The data is accurate. They call it spicy food. It is extremely popular." Crixiel requested a full psychiatric evaluation of the research team. She was certain something had gone wrong. No species voluntarily consumed pain. The evaluation came back normal. The researchers were fine. The humans were the anomaly. The collective dispatched a diplomatic vessel. First contact protocols were initiated. Everything proceeded according to standard procedure. The humans were friendly. They seemed eager to join the galactic community. Their representatives were polite and professional. Then they offered refreshments. Crixiel watched her colleagues accept small cups of dark liquid. The humans called it coffee. She ran a discreet scan. The results made her blood run cold. Coffee contained caffeine. Caffeine was a neurotoxin. It caused increased heart rate, anxiety, tremors, and in sufficient doses, death. The humans drank it every morning. Many drank it multiple times per day. "It tastes bitter," a human delegate explained cheerfully. "Takes some getting used to. But it really wakes you up." Crixiel watched in horror as her Veth colleague took a sip, winced at the taste, and then impossibly took another. The human was right. It was bitter. It was unpleasant. The Veth diplomat drank it anyway. "The effect is quite stimulating," her colleague admitted later, hands trembling slightly. "You are experiencing mild poisoning," Crixiel replied. "Yes, but I am very alert." That evening, Crixiel filed a private report with collective intelligence. She flagged humanity for immediate threat assessment. Not because they were aggressive, not because they had weapons, but because they drank poison for breakfast and called pain flavor. Any species that did such things to itself would be capable of anything. She did not know how right she was. The marathon incident, 3 years had passed since first contact. Humanity had joined the collective as a provisional member. Crixiel had been assigned as their primary liaison. She had learned much about them. None of it made her less afraid. The joint scientific expedition had been routine. A survey mission to catalog mineral deposits on an arid moon. The team included 12 Veth researchers and 4 human scientists. They had expected to be gone for 30 days. On day 8, the transport crashed, Expedition leader Morath assessed the situation with cold precision. The crash had destroyed most of their supplies. Their emergency beacon was damaged but functional. Rescue would come. The problem was timing. They had food and water for 18 days. Rescue would take 22. Morath ran the calculations. The deficit was 4 days. 4 days without adequate resources. The mathematics were clear. Some of them would not survive. He gathered the team to explain. The Veth researchers understood. They began to prepare themselves mentally for the end. It was logical. It was inevitable. The humans refused to accept it. "We can stretch the rations," said Dr. Elena Vasquez. "Reduce intake to survival minimums." "That will cause significant suffering," Morath replied. "Hunger, weakness, pain." Elena shrugged. So? Morath did not understand the question. Pain was something to be avoided. Suffering was failure. No rational being chose discomfort when comfort was available. The humans chose discomfort. They rationed the food to starvation levels. They cut water intake to dangerous minimums. And they kept working. While the Veth researchers conserved energy, the humans continued the survey. They mapped caves. They cataloged minerals. They hauled equipment across the scorching landscape. Why? Morath asked Elena on day 15. "Why do you continue to work when your body is failing?" "Because sitting still makes it worse," she said. "Gives you too much time to think." On day 17, Elena collapsed. Morath found her unconscious near the base camp. He ran a medical scan. Dehydration, malnutrition. Her organs were beginning to struggle. By Veth standards, she was dying. She woke up 15 minutes later. "Give me a minute," she said. Morath stared at her. "You need rest. Extended rest. Your body is shutting down. My body can shut down later." She forced herself upright. Her hands were shaking. Her lips were cracked. "We have work to do." She went back to work. Morath had studied human history by now. He knew about their ancient races. Marathons, they called them. The tradition came from a soldier who had run an impossible distance to deliver a message. The effort had killed him. Humans had turned his death into a sport. Millions of them ran marathons every year. They trained for months to run themselves to the edge of collapse. They paid money for the privilege. On day 19, the Veth researchers began to fail. Morath watched his colleagues grow weak, then weaker. They had accepted death. They were ready for it. The humans were not. On day 21, with rescue still a day away, the humans made a decision. They could not carry the supplies. They could not carry the equipment. But they could carry the Veth. Morath was barely conscious when Elena lifted him onto her back. Her legs were failing. Her muscles were screaming. He could feel her body trembling with each step. "Put me down," he whispered. "Save yourself." "Not how we do things," she replied. 4 humans carried 12 Veth toward the rescue beacon. Their bodies were shutting down. Their organs were failing. Every step should have been impossible. They kept walking. The rescue ship found them on day 22. All 16 survivors were alive. The humans were immediately placed in critical care. The medical team was astonished they had survived at all. Elena was conscious when Morath visited her in the medical bay. "How?" he asked. "How did you keep going?" She smiled weakly. "We're stubborn." Morath filed his report that night. Humanity, he wrote, was not merely resistant to suffering. They had learned to use it. Pain was not their enemy. It was their fuel. He recommended that the collective never go to war. The doctrine of discomfort, the hegemony of Kreth, declared war on a Tuesday. They had been planning it for years. The Veth collective controlled valuable trade routes. The Kreth wanted those routes. Diplomacy had failed. So had threats. The hegemony decided that force was the only option. Their military analysts were confident. The Kreth outnumbered the collective 3-1. Their ships were faster. Their weapons were more powerful. Victory seemed certain. The humans were barely considered. A small species, new to space, poorly armed. Their military was tiny compared to the great powers. The Kreth generals dismissed them as irrelevant. This was a mistake. General Yuki Tanaka commanded the human forces assigned to defend the collective. She had served in Earth's military for 30 years. She had fought in deserts and jungles and frozen mountains. She had led troops in conditions that would kill most species. She gathered her Veth allies for a strategy meeting. They expected her to discuss weapons, tactics, fleet movements. Instead, she talked about suffering. Human military training is based on discomfort, she explained. We call it stress inoculation. The theory is simple. Make training worse than combat. Then combat becomes manageable. The Veth commanders exchanged confused looks. We deprive our soldiers of sleep, Tanaka continued. Sometimes for days. We make them train in extreme temperatures. We cut their food rations. We push them until they break. Then we push them further. Why would you damage your own forces? Asked Admiral Varix. Because it makes them stronger. A soldier who has already experienced hell is not afraid of battle. A soldier who has already starved is not afraid of hunger. We practice suffering so that suffering cannot surprise us. The first engagement came 3 weeks later. A Kreth assault force attacked a human-defended outpost on an ice planet. The Kreth expected an easy victory. The outpost was small. The garrison was outnumbered. The battle lasted 18 hours. The temperature on the planet's surface was 60 degrees below freezing. The Kreth soldiers began to suffer within hours. Their equipment malfunctioned. Their bodies weakened. By hour 12, many were unable to fight. The humans were fine. They had trained in worse. They had slept in colder conditions. They had fought longer battles on less food. The ice planet was unpleasant. But it was not unbearable. Not for them. The Kreth assault force retreated. They had lost half their troops. The humans had lost 12. Intercepted communications revealed the Kreth commander's confusion. Their soldiers had been defeated by an inferior force. The enemy had refused to surrender when surrounded. They had continued fighting when wounded. They had held positions long after any reasonable force would have retreated. They do not respond to pain, one Kreth general reported. We inflict damage, and they keep coming. They ignore wounds that should cripple them. They fight through injuries that should kill them. The war continued for 8 months. The Kreth won battles. They had superior numbers. They had better technology. But every victory cost them more than expected. Every engagement lasted longer than it should have. The humans simply would not stop. Human special forces became legends. Stories spread through the Kreth ranks. Tales of soldiers who operated for 72 hours without sleep, who survived on minimal supplies in hostile environments, who smiled while bleeding. A Kreth officer captured one of these soldiers during a raid. He interrogated her for information about human defenses. She said nothing. He threatened her with pain. She laughed. You don't understand, she told him. We like pain. We train with it. We compete to endure it. Your worst torture is our weekend exercise. The officer released her. He could not break someone who was not afraid of breaking. The hegemony sued for peace 6 months later. Their military had not been destroyed. Their ships still outnumbered the collective. But their soldiers refused to fight. The Kreth troops had learned fear. Not of human weapons. Not of human ships. They feared human endurance. They feared an enemy that could not be broken. They feared a species that ran toward pain while everyone else ran away. General Tanaka attended the peace conference. A Kreth diplomat asked her the question that had haunted his people for months. How do your soldiers endure such suffering? Tanaka smiled. We don't endure it. We enjoy it. The diplomat did not believe her. He thought it was propaganda, a psychological trick. No species could actually enjoy suffering. He was wrong. The beautiful, terrible 20 years had passed since the Kreth War. Ambassador Crixiel stood before a room of young diplomatic cadets. Her scales had grayed with age. Her movements were slower now, but her mind remained sharp. Today, she said, we discuss humanity. The cadets leaned forward. Everyone had heard the stories. Humans were the great mystery of the collective. The species that defied explanation. The beings who terrified and fascinated in equal measure. The xenopsychology is finally understood, Crixiel continued. Though I am not certain we will ever truly believe it. She activated a display. Images appeared. Earth, a world of extremes. Deserts and ice fields. Mountains and oceans. Predators and prey. Humans evolved as persistence predators. Do you know what this means? A young cadet raised her hand. They chased their prey until it died. Correct. But not in the way you might think. Humans were not the fastest creatures on their world. They were not the strongest. They could not outrun their prey. So they outlasted it instead. She showed footage of ancient human hunters. They moved at a steady pace across a savanna. Their target was a large animal, four-legged and swift. It ran from them easily. Watch, Crixiel said. The footage compressed hours into minutes. The animal ran. The humans followed. The animal ran again. The humans followed again. This continued. The animal grew tired. The humans did not. Finally, the animal collapsed. It could run no more. The humans walked up to it calmly. They were tired. They were in pain. But they were still standing. Humans evolved to endure, Crixiel explained. Their entire neurology rewards persistence through suffering. When they experience pain, their brains release chemicals called endorphins. These chemicals create pleasure. The worse the pain, the greater the reward. A cadet looked disturbed. Their brains reward them for suffering? Yes, they have a term for it. Runner's high. The euphoria that comes after extreme physical exertion. Another term is no pain, no gain. They genuinely believe that discomfort is the path to improvement. She paused. The room was silent. This makes them terrifying. But today I want to show you something else. Something I did not understand for many years. New images appeared. Human parents working in factories. Their faces were tired. Their bodies were worn. They worked brutal hours for modest pay. These humans are suffering, Crixiel said. Long hours. Physical strain. Exhaustion. Why do they do it? She switched to an image of children, playing, laughing, healthy and fed and clothed. For them, these parents destroy their own bodies to provide for offspring who may never fully appreciate the sacrifice. The suffering is the point. It is how they show love. More images. Human doctors working impossible shifts. Nurses caring for the sick while neglecting their own health. Scientists sacrificing years of their lives to research that might never succeed. These humans suffer for strangers. People they will never meet. Lives they will never know. They damage themselves in service to others. And they call this purpose. More images. Human artists, musicians, writers. Faces twisted in concentration. Hands cramped from endless work. Bodies broken by their craft. These humans suffer for beauty. They pour themselves into creations that bring them agony. A human writer once said that writing was easy. You simply sit at a keyboard and bleed. They meant it literally. Final images. Human activists in chains. Protesters facing violence. Reformers imprisoned for their beliefs. People who sacrificed everything for causes they knew they would never see succeed. These humans suffer for ideas, for justice, for change. They accept persecution and imprisonment and torture, not for themselves, for futures they will never see, for people not yet born. Crixiel turned off the display. The room remained silent. I spent many years afraid of humanity, she said. Their capacity for suffering seemed monstrous, inhuman. I could not understand how a species could embrace pain. She looked at her students. I understand now. Humanity does not merely endure suffering. They have learned to transmute it. Pain becomes meaning. Struggle becomes purpose. Sacrifice becomes love. She walked slowly toward the window. Beyond the glass, ships moved through the station. Humans worked alongside Veth. Children of both species played together. The galaxy has many species that avoid suffering. We build our civilizations around comfort, safety, the minimization of pain. This is logical. This is rational. This is wise. She turned back to face the cadets. Only one species has learned to make suffering beautiful. Only humans run toward pain instead of away from it. Only they have discovered that the worst experiences can create the best selves. A young cadet raised her hand. Are they still terrifying? Crixiel smiled. It was the first time her students had ever seen her smile. Yes, she said. But now I understand why. They are terrifying because they are capable of anything. They will suffer any pain, endure any hardship, sacrifice anything that matters to them. Not because they are monsters, because they are something far more dangerous. What? They are beings who have found meaning in suffering, and a being with meaning cannot be stopped. She dismissed the class. The cadets filed out, whispering among themselves. But one remained behind, a young Veth male. He approached her nervously. Ambassador, he said, do you think we could learn? Could we learn to find meaning in suffering? Crixiel considered the question. It was the same question she had asked herself many times. Perhaps, she said, the humans would be happy to teach us. They are generous that way. She paused. But I warn you, the lessons are painful. The young Veth nodded. He understood. Pain was the point. Perhaps there was hope for them all.